viruses killing bees, forum postings, going from good to great, and live bee removal, all on this edition of the Pest Geek Podcast. Pull out your hose and grab your can. We're about to integrate another Pest Geek Podcast. Hi, everybody. Frank Hernandez here, and welcome to the Pest Geek Podcast, bringing you the latest information on pests, products, and politics from today's leading industry sources to help you start, manage, and grow your pest control business. Hey, we have a beautiful podcast lined up for you today. I hope you're having an awesome time. I'm Frank Hernandez, host of the Pest Geek Podcast, your Pest Geek here every week. And we're discussing all things pest this week, where we're going to be discussing all things bees. A lot of things going on with bees. We just performed another live bee removal with success, and we're so happy about that we're able to save a lot of bees by doing this. And why do we do it? Well, because we believe that if we have the opportunity to do the right thing simply because it is the right thing to do, that's what we'll do. Not because it is socially acceptable or because it's popular, because it's trending, simply because it is the right thing to do. And we have a new bee study that came out on viruses that are detecting, they were able to detect in killing bees. And we're going to be discussing the results of that and also the new revelations that came out of that with new viruses and many viruses. And most people think it's maybe one or two viruses. And it raises a lot of questions about what is going on with bees worldwide, because this isn't a phenomenon just here in the U.S. It's in the U.K. It's around the world. And I think it affects all of us at one point or another. You know, it affects our food. There seems to be a lot of just paranoia about it, and a lot of people take drastic actions. But I think that they're starting to take the study of bees very, very seriously when they haven't really done that in the past. And I think as things happen and as things evolve in this process, we will see new revelations of things happening. But I hope that you had a wonderful weekend. I did too. We went out with the family to a little water park down in the Keys known as Jacob's Aquatics, and it's a great little place to go. It's a pool with a little park for kids to play in. My son was just petrified at the water park and all the water falling. He doesn't even like the shower falling on him, so he was really petrified with that. But we had a blast. There's a big Olympic swimming pool with huge diving boards, and that was just a trip. So if you're ever down in the Keys, it's in Key Largo. It's only about an hour from Homestead. So it's not that far, and, you very, very cheap. I mean, you can go with the entire family for like $30. There's not a lot of places you can take your family for a day, for $30 anymore. So the kids had a blast. My wife had a blast. I had a blast, and that was real fun. And then normally on Mondays, I do this podcast, which today was just one of those hectic days. We've got tons of calls in the morning, just long calls, and it just, I had to handle all those calls and, handling marketing calls and things like that. And then normally after I record my podcast, I pick up my daughter from school and we have a date together. And this is our date. And, we do it once a week, and I pick her up. We do homework together. We go have lunch together, and then we go to the park and we play, and then, come back home here and do some more work, until late in the evening, and then have dinner and all that, and then I'll do some more work late in the evening. So that's, we got to make time for, in our busy schedule. I mean, if I don't make the time for these things, I just don't get to do it. So I just have to make our time for everything that's important. I hope that you can look at that too and make things that are a priority, put them on your calendar. And if I don't put my stuff on the calendar, it doesn't get done. So that time is blocked off on my calendar every Monday for me to spend that time with her alone, just me and her hanging out. And that's our little date. And then also on our date nights, I go with my wife, and we try to have, lately it's been very tough, and have a date night on Thursdays and just spend time together, just her and I. And with the little one, that's just been a real struggle getting a babysitter. So that's one of the challenges of running your own business. You get to work whenever you want, but you find yourself working a lot of the time. So, that's pretty much how it goes during the week around here. And, but I like to give a shout out and some thank yous, to some people who've been following us and, been very gracious to us. Akeem Pest Control. Akeem Pest Control in Niagara region, Ontario, Canada, is following us on Twitter, and thank you for following us. And also Keith M. Parrish, who works at Northwest Pest Control in Waltham, Massachusetts, gave us a 5-star on Facebook. So thank you for the generosity of the 5-star. Really do appreciate that. And I hope this podcast is really blessing you guys and helping you in your business, helping you dealing with your customers, helping you in all areas of the business that we're in, that we chose to be in. And it's a fabulous business. There's a tool that I use that I've been using, and I've been using it now for about a year, which I think is great. And it's our tech tip of the week. It's called Hootsuite. And Hootsuite is to be able to manage your social media. And if you have multiple accounts like Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and 2 others, you can also use it for Google Plus to manage your Google Plus account. And we use it. And then you can also create multiple accounts like, groups and things like that. You can manage it all together in one place on one screen in real time, seeing what's happening across the board. It's like having a board where all your social media is in one place. And Hootsuite is an awesome tool. It's like $14.99 a month, to help you manage and, use all your, we couldn't do it, without Hootsuite, all the social media work that we do. It would cost us hundreds of dollars in just employees to manage, those accounts. And for $15 a month, you get to manage them all. Check out the link. We got a link set up there, for Hootsuite, and you can check that out. Also, on the SEO front, I wanted to talk about forum posting. And forum posting is another great way to get backlinks, to create backlinks and awareness of who you are. And you want to try to find some local forums or something that you can go into maybe once a week or, once a month, and, help some people out that are struggling with pest control. And there's a lot of restrictions on forums. It's very tough to do. But, if you're the kind of person that just likes going on there and, chatting with people and giving advice and giving it for free, it's a great way to get back some links and some SEO value. And I would highly recommend that you get on some forums that you could recommend some, tips or techniques to people to solve their own problems. And in the meantime, you can get a backlink and some notoriety out of it, for doing that. So it's a great, way on SEO, to get some SEO ranking. It's part of an SEO strategy. SEO is about a bunch of strategies working together to, just like integrated pest management, to get control, to get noticed. And, so I highly recommend, forum postings for you to be able to get some SEO value. In our book of the week, I like to recommend a great book. I love this book. I have a bunch of books by him, and I just think he's a great writer. This one is Good to Great, by Jim Collins. Why some companies make the leap and others don't, and why some companies grow, and some don't. And a lot of it has to do with getting the right people, what he calls getting the right people on the bus. A lot of people grow sometimes by accident. You get, then you have to hire your first employee, and that's sometimes a huge blunder. And it's a great way to kind of understand how that hiring the right people first, sometimes before you need them, is vital to growing and being able to grow. And if you have the budget, and you're able to do it, and hiring the people first before you even have the position open, to groom the right people into that job. It's a couple of other things, but the book is great. I'd highly recommend, Good to Great by Jim Collins. You can get a free audio trial on that by using our link, audibletrials.com/pestgeek. And you can check that out, in the podcast notes. We're going to be talking about bee viral studies that have been done. I'm going to share a bunch of viral studies with you, but this one in particular shines new light on the issue of bees and the colony collapse disorder and what is happening. And it's long been suspected that the varroa mite is a culprit, but just until now, we really haven't known how much of a role this mite plays and how many viruses it can spread to bees. And, usually thought it would start 1, then 2. Well, now we're talking about 3 to 4, and with several mutations that's able to transmit. So the disease associated with honeybee disease transmitted by varroa mites is more severe than previously thought. This is from a study that was published in Entomology Today, which I got a link to the original study, and they did a great job on this article. It's an awesome article, I think, that Entomology Today did on this. They interviewed the people on there, and I think they did a wonderful job. The study looked at 2 major organisms that affect honeybees, the varroa mite and the fungal parasite Nosema, which has 2 distinct parasites there, and which disrupts the bee's digestive system. Okay, so the study found clear trends occurring annually with both varroa infestations that peak in late summer and then in early fall, and the Nosema fungi peaking in the winter. So assuming that it's being transmitted, then it's peaking in the winter. The study also found very notable differences in the prevalence of varroa mites and Nosema fungi between migratory and stationary hives. So, this was a new revelation. Migratory beekeepers reported lower levels of varroa mites compared with stationary hives that stay put all year round. And then the reverse was true for the Nosema fungi, with lower relative incidence of infections reported in stationary hives. This was really weird for them to find this. In this study, there was detected a strong positive relationship, and this is where it gets good, relationship between Varroa destructor and Varroa transmitted viruses, such as Nosema Lake Sinai virus 2, and there's also a positive relationship across many viral pathogens of bees. These results provided a disease baseline to help identify the drivers of poor bee health. Okay, so the study was great for establishing baselines. Now, there are about 24 viruses that have been identified in honeybees. And because many of the viruses are closely related, many members are single species complexes, they're really about 16 to 18 altogether distinct viruses. A lot of them are just closely related. But here's the quote from the article. It says, "Our biggest surprise was the high level of varroa, especially in fall, in well-managed colonies cared for by beekeepers who have taken steps to control varroa mites." So there's a link there to that study, but it raised a lot of questions in my mind about one of the questions that it raised was the knowledge and the expertise of beekeepers in general to be able to identify the symptoms, the disease of these diseases in their hives. And just like in our business, there are people with different level of expertise who are licensed pest control operators. Because you are licensed doesn't mean you're an expert. It means that you have the minimum qualifications required by the state to acquire a license and perform pest control. And some people have 10 years of experience with very limited expertise. Experience and expertise don't necessarily go together. There are a lot of people who've been doing the same thing for 20 years and feel there's no need to change, and they've been spraying the same product for 20 years. And other people who become experts in specific fields, in pest control, whether it's in GHP, whether it's in commercial, whether it's in facilities, management. Others become experts in plants. Others become experts in palms. Others become experts in palms. They have a level of expertise. Well, it raised a question about beekeepers and whether most beekeepers, I've talked to a couple of them, some of them are getting into it and they have several hives and they're learning and they don't know a whole lot about bees themselves. And especially when you start getting into these issues of diseases. So it makes me wonder if a lot of people doing beehives simply aren't experts in understanding what is happening to their bees. And then second, when their bee collapses, do they seek the advice of a laboratory or a professional to find out why their beehive collapsed? And do we know that? And I think that's going to be vital to being able to determine what has actually been happening with bees, if it's just been a high level of bacterial fungi or viruses attacking beehives, but nobody's really doing studies on those beehives. They're just saying, well, it must have been because somebody sprayed nearby. And I know plenty of nurseries that I talk to, the nursery people that work there and the managers. They know very little about bacterial diseases and fungal diseases. These are reseller nurseries. They basically just go in and spray it every week with an insecticide and a fungicide, not knowing exactly what's wrong, but they just spray it because it's a lot easier to do that than try to get a staff of people to understand what is happening to their plants. I see it all the time. This is nothing new. So that's my question that arose in my mind by the comments made in the study. Do these beekeepers know what is happening to their hives? And are they paying somebody to say, my beehive collapsed, my hives collapsed, I lost 20, 30, 50, 100. When 100 hives collapse, do they look and find out and try to get a scientific answer, pay a laboratory for the work, to find out why their bees collapsed? So they just say, well, it must have been a pesticide, and, they fold up the shop and start new colonies and ignore anything that could have been something else that could have caused that. In another study called Crop Pollination Exposes Honeybees to Pesticides Which Alter Their Susceptibility to the Gut Pathogen Nosema cereniae. So they did a study and they found that in what they claim is that attention must be paid to determine how bees are exposed to pesticide outside the fields in which they are placed in. They did one study where they detected 35 different pesticides in pollen samples and have found high fungicide loads in those samples. So in other words, are the fungicides causing a resistance to the fungi in the gut? In other words, is it causing more of a resistance, that fungicide, or debilitating the bee, not being able to fight off the fungal pathogens? And that's a question. So that arises. Some of the other viruses, like Lake Sinai virus. In a study of Lake Sinai viruses, which now we have up to 7 of the LSV genomes, not one single thing is causing colony collapse disorder. Now, what they found is that they also found the Lake Sinai virus in collapsed colonies. And what they've been able to do with the sequence analysis is been able to detect the LSV1 and LSV2 genomes, and also the detection of the LSV4 in the U.S., and also discover the LSV6 and LSV7. So now we're starting to take this issue very seriously of identifying, and all of a sudden, we find that there are 7 viruses. It's not that they're new, they've been there, we just are able to identify them now. And with the detection of the LSV1 and LSV2 in the varroa mite, now we're able to determine they were able to determine large proportions of the LSV2 found in the bee's gut. So they're able to detect that. So now we know that also the Lake Sinai viruses are transmitted by varroa mite. So it seems like the varroa mite is playing a huge role in transmitting a lot of these diseases. Also, the other virus, deformed wing virus, or DMV, or DWV, I'm sorry, also are associated with colony collapses. And this is also the varroa mite destructor also carries this virus. And with the Nosema fungi, there's actually two of those, Nosema apis and Nosema cerinae. And those two are the ones that are causing a major problem, and they're transmitted by the varroa mite destructor. Now, how does the virus kill the bees? Well, when the bee ingests the Nosema the spores, one or either one or the other or both sometimes of the different Nosema spores, they are filtered out of the honey's sac by the provendicular valve, and then it's released into the midgut. Okay, once it's in the midgut, then the midgut has the right physical chemicals that can stimulate the germination process of the organisms. And then once it does that, then one of the cell organisms then penetrates the cell, one of the cells, and then the multiplication begins, absorbing the nutrients from the cell, and then it basically doubles inside, splits, and a new parasite is formed, and this multiplication begins until basically the cell becomes exhausted, and then that's it. And then it triggers, depending upon the species, approximately 100 spores can begin to develop as early as 4 days to about 9 days after the bee becomes infected. Now, a heavily infected worker bee can contain an excess of 50 million spores. So this is where that becomes serious. Now, the intestinal tissue becomes damaged, subject to secondary infections known as dysentery. And what happens is basically it causes the bee to have diarrhea. And then the diarrhea is all over the combs on the exterior of the hive. And then from the Nosema cerinae. Now, Nosema apis, infected bees will also defecate inside the hive, contaminating the comb with millions of infected spores. And that's just how basically it starts to. So in this case, it's the old, you shouldn't, poop where you eat, kind of deal. In this case, where you live also. And I got a great study on that from UC Davis, on how this happens. And you can read all about the entire study. I'm just giving you a synopsis, of these studies, but to make you see and help your customers, and other people understand, your technicians, that it's not, when we say, well, it's just the neonicotinoids, that is not true. It is not just. It probably, by the time this is all said and done, we will find out that there's a lot more stuff that we didn't know, that they're starting to find out now about all these viruses and all these diseases that wasn't a huge issue and nobody took really, really, really seriously. Although some of these viruses were discovered in the 40s. So it's not, anything. It's just a matter of, doing real scientific work, to find out why this is happening. And my assumption is that if you are a beekeeper and you've got a couple dozen beehives and they collapse, well, you're just not going to pay anybody to do anything. It's just like when I talk to customers and their palm trees are all dying, or their trees are dying, and they want me to find out what's wrong with it. I said, I really can't, in a lot of cases, know exactly, but we can do an analysis on the dead tree. Well, what's that going to cost? Well, picking up the sample, taking it to the lab, picking up the report, paying for it, it's going to cost you a couple $100. Oh no, I don't want to pay for that. Well, I can't really diagnose it without knowing for sure what happened to that tree, except taking it to a lab. And it's a lot of work to cut the samples, take them to the lab, and wait for the results and pay for them. And the same, I think, is true here, that I don't know how big do you have to have, how many beehives have to die before you take the issue serious and say, I want to find out what happened. And was it caused by your ignorance, or was it caused by your neglect, or was it caused by something else? And do we know that? And I think we're too quick to say, because most people don't want to pay for things to find out what happened, or there's not enough information yet, or, they take it to a lab and, they don't find anything, then it must have been the pesticide. And I think that's the damage that's being done, is automatically assuming that pesticides are causing it. Now, do I believe pesticides have something? Yes. Because, if you've got a grove where you're releasing thousands of bees, and you're leaving those hives there, and you don't know what the grower did or one of his employees did, if they accidentally sprayed before all the bees were back in the hive at night, because, sun was going down and they can't spray in the dark, and all those bees are still out there. Yeah. That I know is a huge possibility. I'm not discounting that. But to totally say that it is, just the insecticides, or the fungicides causing the issue, I think that is I think it's negligent to do that. And you're not being a real investigator. You're not being a real scientist at this point. You're just trying to make a headline. So there's another study that I did, the spread of infectious chronic bee paralysis viruses, by honeybees. And there's a link to that. And then the honeybees' feces. There's a study there, molecular diagnosis of chronic bee paralysis, virus infections, and ResearchGate. It's a great article. I'm reading a lot of this material because it's a lot of material to go through, but I thought I'd give you what I found, through the articles. There's also, 3 invasives that have not made it to us yet. And they're a problem in other parts of the world. The parasitic, Tropiolaps mite. There's a great article on that by the University of Florida, on that. There's also the Asian honeybee, Apis cerana, that has not made it here yet. And that is a possibility that we could have that bee, and that could cause more problems for us and beekeepers, like the Africanized honeybee did, when it came into, here in the U.S. There's also 2, the sac brood and acute bee paralysis virus. And there's 2 of those articles. Those have not made it here, but they are in other parts of the world. So we're wondering, what is finding the relationship between the issue with bees and the collapse and pesticides or fungicides or inert ingredients. We still don't know if some inert ingredients are affecting bees. Now, what can you do? Well, traditionally, you nuke the beehive and you pull it out and you go away on your merry way. It's the most costly, least costly way of removing a beehive. Now, I've done those before, and then I felt so bad. My conscience is a terrible thing. I felt terrible because I said, man, I totally contaminated that hive, destroyed all the bees. Look at every time when I tore down that honey bee and I said, man, look at all that honey just pouring out of there. And you can't eat it now because it's been contaminated by a pesticide. And there's a couple of studies leading that, just about every honeybee now that you find, somewhere on a property has a pesticide in it. I'm looking for that study now. I saw it and I just couldn't remember where it was. But I'm going to try to find a link to it, see if I can get it and put it up. But I felt so terrible. Like, man, you can't eat it. You just got to throw this all away. And because, it's a quick and dirty job. I mean, that's reality of what it is. And, sometimes it has to be done. There's no other option. I just did a beehive a couple of months ago. It was inside a block wall between 2 holes that they had run for an electrical pipe for a sign. And I get this all the time where people make holes to commercial structures and then they don't seal them back. And then all of a sudden a beehive makes a nest in there, and it was between 2 blocks, and you can't pound out the block wall because, you're going to have a collapse of the wall. So we had to, nuke it, and we had to inject it and seal it up and then let it die. And then, we just had to seal it. And since it was a commercial building, there was no odor. Other times I found them in commercial buildings, and we have saved them. We save them most of the time. They're just in weird places. Sometimes you have no access to them. They're way up in a tree somewhere 30 feet in the air. What are you going to do? The customer's freaking out because bees are swarming every time they get out in the front yard, and you can't get a ladder 30 feet in the air or get a bucket truck, and they're just very costly. When you tell a customer it's going to be $500 to rent a bucket truck to knock down that beehive, they're going to tell you where to go. And, so there's certain times where you just have to do it. But most of the times if they're in eaves or in a home, trying to talk the customer into doing a live removal, because the cost, it could be, or it could not be a difference, depending on how difficult that be. We just did one that was very difficult. They had done a bee removal before in the same location. They sealed up the bottom, but they never sealed the original hole that the bee found to get in. I mean, this is the moronic things that I see here that just ticks me off to no end. You get a beehive, you remove it, you seal the bottom of it, and you leave the hole where the bee found its way in. You didn't seal it. And then all of a sudden the customer says, well, it was about a year ago, and I see hives coming out of there, and this is where they knocked it out. Well, when they knocked it out, they had to put in a bunch of 2x4s to reinforce the new plate that they were going to put so they can put the mesh and then the concrete. And by the time they did this, the hole had been reduced to about, 9, 12, it wasn't even a foot. I couldn't get my head in there. And I tried, and the net got caught, in one of the splinters or the screws that were there, and tore it open, and a bee started getting into my hood and stung me on the forehead. And then I don't know if it's the same bee that stung me on the ear. So we basically struggled to get that hive out of there with one hand stretching in there, trying to scrape it out and save all the honey. We did save the bees because we vacuum, the bees out first. And people don't understand it. It's a labor of love, and it takes time because you can't, if you're pounding on a surface, you're going to aggravate the bees. I mean, they're not taking lightly to this pounding, and you have to give them time to then calm down, smoke them a bit, let them relax, start vacuum them out very gently. You can't just suck them out with a regular vac. You're going to make bee soup. And, that's, one of the things. So you have to get this bee vac that gently sucks the bees out. Then you're dumping this bucket, into a hive. And, sometimes they get aggravated and you got to smoke them, and it takes a long while. Well, this was supposed to be a 3-hour job that turned into a 6-hour job with about 7 stings, even through the suit, because they got aggravated. And you got to calm them down, and you can't have people there. Now, we do these normally in the evening when everybody's going to be inside. Not a lot of people are going to be out, and all the bees have returned, with their pollen and catch as many bees as we possibly can. And we rescue probably about 95% of the bees, with about maybe 75, 80% of them live to see another day by the time we get them to the farm. And we've worked out this great deal with a local guy who creates hives, and he manufactures them, and they're great people. And they got hives, and I say, they even offer to pick up the hives if we pack them for them, and do that. And so, great relationship that we have with them. And it does help in doing those kind of service, but it is harder. It is harder than just sitting there, making a hole, nuking it with something through a hole, waiting for them to die, and then coming in and extracting the hive. I mean, that can be done. That's the way it's done. But we did 1 to 2 of those, and then I couldn't live with myself. And then I just decided we're just going to devote ourselves to doing live removal. And if we can't do a live removal, we'll have to nuke it, but we're going to do everything possible to save that hive. These were big. This was a big hive. It's probably about 2.5 feet, 3 feet in length, maybe 1.5 feet deep. We took out about maybe 25 pounds of brood, and probably about 25 pounds of a bucket of comb with honey that we were able to save. And then we will just pack it and give that away to people. And it's just a nice thing to do. It does help in doing what we can for those bees. And if the customer is willing to pay for it and, is conscious about that effort also, that's who we want as a customer. And we try to find a marriage, and we find customers that, we can relate with and relate to, and be able to do those kind of things. So, one of the things you got to know about bee removal is anytime you wear a suit, man, you got to tape your ankles. Every time I forget to tape my ankles, I get stung in the ankles. Especially if we're up on a ladder and they're swarming around us. They seem to always find that little hole in our ankles. Got bit a couple times through the suit, and it's not that bad because it's a mild sting. But when they do get you, I'm getting, that the behind the neck, making sure your collar's up, protect those. But, it's a labor of love, and it takes a while to start vacuuming and vacuuming and vacuuming and vacuuming and vacuuming and getting them all, and start removing the hive and vacuuming every piece of comb to try to get as many bees as you can. Those are things that, like I said, it is a labor of love. It's one of those things that, not everybody has the patience to do, and not everybody's willing to pay for. And I think that's the combination of, if you got patience, I'm not one of those guys that has a lot of patience, but, for some reason, sometimes I enjoy doing that work. It is very hot in the suit. You sweat a lot, you dehydrate a lot. It's a constantly getting up and down from a ladder. It is, but sometimes that kind of work and that kind of physical work lets me forget about what it is that I'm doing in business, do something recreational. Some people do woodwork. Some people, play golf. I kind of enjoy that process, of, doing that kind of work and physical labor, which I don't do a lot anymore. I used to do a lot of physical labor and do a lot of construction work, and I don't do it anymore. And this is one of those things where I enjoy. So I hope that, this podcast has been helpful to you, that you're able to get a lot of information out of all those studies that we published, and that you got a new perspective on bees and bee removal. It might be something you would probably want to get into. It's not that hard. You need very little equipment to do it, and just a lot of patience and some love. And I think you can find a new income stream that you didn't think about before. Just get well trained, well educated on the facts, and attend a couple of beekeepers conferences and learn from them about what it takes. And this guy was amazing. This guy who owns their South Florida Bee Supply, and amazing at just, they're so passionate about the bees and everything, and his wife is really passionate about it. And he just sat down with me and says, do this, do this, do this, do this, don't do this. And, was able to really, really guide me on how to get this done right and save those bees and get as many as we can. And I hope that you can find somebody that will help you do that, and maybe it's something that you would enjoy. Hey guys, this is all I have for today. Until next time, hey, have a great one. Thank you for listening to the Pest Geek Podcast. If you have enjoyed the Pest Geek Podcast, please give us a rating, write a review, or subscribe to the channel. You can join the Pest Geek Society by visiting pestgeekpodcast.com. Thank you for listening. See you next time.